how do we invite people to then participate? Maybe, because few people will have experiences at the best restaurants in LA, probably.
Right. I
So like,
wish everyone could eat at Providence. I wish they all
right.
could.
I've never eaten at Providence. Uh, but so the invitation still has to be there,
Right.
but without the experience necessarily of the best restaurants. And so how does this play out then in normal everyday life?
It plays out, I think, in love and care and paying attention to love and care, right? Because it doesn't, right? It's the difference between, oh, like I want to go look at a Rembrandt, right? That is an experience. But that doesn't mean that I won't also appreciate when a friend makes a beautiful drawing. Like
Right.
it's not going to be Rembrandt level, but I'm going to not just say, "Oh, that's cute." I'm going to pay attention to that and I'm going to recognize it as the gift that it is. So anybody who makes a meal for someone else, um, if it is done with love, right?
Yeah.
That's, I think, the key. And you'll hear people talk about that. They'll say, some people who don't go to the fancy restaurants don't know anything about that, but they'll say, you know what? My mother or my grandmother made an XYZ and it was made with love.
Right.
Um, one of the best hamburgers I've ever had in my life. Well, it was partly because my mom was trying to keep us like at the time fat was bad and she used to actually get the leanest of ground beef and she used to put it on a rack and broil it and so all the fat would drip out of it and we had these little hockey pucks of meat and this is what I thought homemade hamburgers were. But my grandmother took like the full, ground chuck or
Right.
whatever it was and she like fried it in a pan
Mm.
and then took the buns and toasted the buns in the pan in the grease
Right.
and then melted the cheese on top. Like it was so it was so decadent,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And made with love, made for her granddaughter and her
Hmm.
grandson. To pay attention to those offerings of love and to receive them as that. Here's the other end of this. The church that I'm at right now, for 2 days a week, for 2 hours each of those days, they decided they could do a thing called Cathedral Cafe.
Hmm.
We are a downtown parish, meaning we are amongst a bunch of cool restaurants and things, but it also means we're right in the heart of the situation with homelessness and precarious housed people, right?
Right.
And drug addiction and mental illness and all of that. This cafe opens its doors, anyone can come in,
Hmm.
and there's coffee and tea and cookies. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a couple that makes cookies for this. They are some of the best cookies I have ever had.
Right.
They're tremendous and they're made with love and they're offered to this population. But what's really key about it is that there are volunteers and staff who sit down and have coffee and tea with the people who
Hmm.
come. It's not about serving, it's about community. It's about being
With.
with.
I was just thinking that word with.
It's about being with, but it's about the equalizing of food. It's about enjoying. And by the way, we just got a grant from the city. We're now doing it 9 to 4, Monday through Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, but
Awesome.
with some professionals to help us, like people who know about food insecurity and housing and things like that. But we still need volunteers, and the
Yeah.
main job of the volunteer is to serve, but to also sit down and have a conversation.
Right.
So this can be done on multiple levels. These are people without anything
Yeah.
or with very little, and they love having a place to sit and be welcomed, and also to here's another key thing, and I love this. This is I'm excited about this for the missional movement and like new expressions and fresh expressions of church. There's this wonderful idea going around saying we have to be careful when we're the only ones controlling the hospitality.
Hmm.
because then we set the agenda.
Right.
And this is how we get into, I'm sorry, colonialism and
Yeah. Yeah.
like
No, right.
it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And what a lovely concept of is receiving someone else's hospitality is an essential form of ministry.
Yeah.
To let yourself be brought into someone else's home, to eat their food,
Mm-hmm.
to understand their culture, like to appreciate it. All of this is, I learn these things by relishing, what's another one of my favorites? I love some of I really am a dessert person, like this particular melon dessert that I had, or the sunchoke dessert, or,
Right. Because
like
you weren't a big
huh?
chocolate dessert fan, were you?
Oh no, I love the chocolate.
You
Matthew doesn't.
oh, okay, I couldn't read. I was like,
Mike doesn't. Mike doesn't. Matthew doesn't. They don't particularly care for the dark chocolate stuff. So I always have to succumb. I sacrificially agree
okay.
to the tropical desserts that Mike likes, or the more caramel vanilla desserts that Matthew likes. So on my own time, and Mike knows this. So for my birthday, every year now when we're here in Canada, he sends me a box of very fine chocolates from a place called Soma up here in
Mm,
Toronto. That they make their chocolate on site, and it's
wow.
fabulous. So yeah. So no, I think there is beauty everywhere. I think that I think that there can be incredible beauty. Like I said, there can be incredible beauty found in 21 different people bringing different mac and
Right.
cheeses, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the way of inviting people into the experience of it and helping people stop and pay attention and relish. Gratitude is a part of it, but being open to receiving the
Hmm.
love and the gift that's there. Because what really is a sensitive palate? It's somebody who's tried a lot of things and thought about it, right?
Yeah.
And received as a really sensitive palate is someone who is trying to open up their receiver as wide as possible.
Hmm. And to wait and see what happens.
Yes.
And I feel like that.
Yeah.
I- Have you read any of Andrew Root's books? He's talked about ministry in the secular age. Anyway,
I
um,
think I haven't. He's been recommended to me, but I haven't yet.
but
Yeah.
a lot of his key themes is he's not railing, but almost railing against this performance-based Christianity of like we got to do more, we got to do more, whereas the invitation is to wait and see what God.
Yes. Yes. Yes, 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 yes.
And as I've read his work, I've always thought about the table because that's where my mind goes. Everything is read through the lens of the table for me. But I'm
So
wondering,
tell me about waiting in the table then, Andrew.
I wonder as we invite people to sit, or as people invite us to sit, it's what you were talking about, where hospitality can be used sometimes as a control aspect, where we set the agenda, or we have people into our homes as good believers, quote unquote, right? To
Mhm.
minister to our neighbors, whereas it's still on my space, on my agenda. Whereas going into the spaces where God might be inviting us and God might be working, like what your church is doing, of just, we have these people, how do we minister? How do we wait with them? And so,
Yes.
it's sitting there with open hands as a guest, thinking, okay, how do we then listen and wait and see what God wants to do? Uh,
Amen.
because even
And
with your relationship with Mike, it's a very unlikely source of God's goodness to you.
I mean, I thought like I, I was so surprised. I mean, Mike, he's a lovely Christian man, so
Right.
but like I I didn't I didn't know. He blew my categories is what he did. He blew open my categories for what generosity could be, what
Hmm.
it could look like, what what food could look like. It was a whole art form I just hadn't experienced before. And honest, okay, you have to know this. I was afraid of the kitchen. I think I told you this, right?
I don't remember.
Okay, so I got by with thank God for Trader Joe's, right? Like I got by with, their frozen meals and stuff. I had very few things that I knew how to cook well. I felt I did not. I was afraid of the kitchen. I could bake. I've always been able to bake, but it was like making a meal. I never really learned how to do that, and the
Huh.
timing scared me, and I didn't like. I wasn't skilled at that, and so then Matthew, when we got married, he cooked. He was the one that made the meals. And then when we moved to Toronto and he was doing his PhD work, I thought, okay, from everything I've heard, he's going to be crazy busy. I'm going to have to be the one that cooks. And I had tried to delve into the cooking world a few times. I wore myself out on one dish and then was like, I don't know how to do I don't know how to do this. So I had all these cookbooks that I would rarely, I just didn't know how to cook on a regular basis. And so we get to Toronto, and the way that we shipped our books was through media mail to another, to a UPS store in Niagara Falls, New York. And then we'd go down across border and bring our books back. It was just the cheapest way
Right.
for sending our books. But the store would only take like 4 boxes of books at a time. And so we had like 12 boxes of books. So we had 3 different runs we had to go get our books. And we went and got the first round of books. And for some reason, I had put the cookbooks in like the last box to come.
Oh, wow.
And here we are in Toronto, and I'm having and there's sort of different price structures on things. Like in California, like tortillas and chicken and cheese were sort of what we would eat. And the chicken up here is more expensive. I think it's because they care for their birds better, honestly. But the chicken was more expensive. We were near a Chinese supermarket,
Hmm.
and that was our closest supermarket. And I just didn't, I didn't know how to compute these things, and I don't have my cookbooks, and I'm feeling like I need to be the one that cooks now. Well, thank God I had a few magazines of Real Simple,
Okay.
and they had interesting food that was easy. Like it felt like entry-level food.
Right.
And I started making Real Simple recipes, and for a year, I cooked dinner every night, and I did not repeat except for twice the
Wow.
recipes so that I would learn how to cook. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is the story of hospitality that was necessary for this to happen. When I would freak out and start to cry in the kitchen because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, or if I made a meal that didn't turn out right, I had the most hospitable husband. He was like the picture of grace.
Hmm.
He just said, okay, so that didn't work. We'll try it again next time.
Right.
Like, so he wasn't overly like, that was like, oh, that's okay, da da da, right? Like he had this, it's very Jesus-like. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. This tasted terrible.
Right.
So you've learned.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad at you, and we're all okay.
Mm-hmm.
Without that was the person receiving what I was doing, I would never have learned how to cook.
Wow.
It would never have happened. As much as I love food, it still was like things for people who are talented like Andrew Camp, not for people like me. And so I'm not afraid of the kitchen. I can cook. I'm not very fast. My knife skills still aren't that great, but I but I like to cook now, and
Wow.
I and we know what kind of recipes we like, right? We
Yeah.
like not quite Bon Appetit, a little more than Real Simple, we not
Yeah.
too hard, but something kind of fun and inventive.
Yeah.
And we do that for each other. Matthew and I do that for each other. And it's fun to go to work and have people go, what are you eating?
Right. Yes. It is. People always said that to me when I would bring lunch, and I'm like, well, it's not that hard. You just sort of do it. Like, come on.